Hello, and welcome to Things We Said Today, our bi-weekly podcast about anything and everything to do with the Beatles, collectively, individually, past, present, sometimes things to come. I'm Allan Kozinn, the author of The Beatles from the Cavern to the Rooftop, and Got That Something, How the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand Changed Everything, and co-author with Adrian Sinclair of The McCartney Legacy, Volumes 1 and 2 so far, Volume 3 in the works. I'm joined by my three regular co-hosts. You know Ken Michaels as the host of the syndicated Beatles radio show Every Little Thing. And he also has his own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, which is packed with Beatles related interviews and stuff, contests, you name it. Hello, Ken. How are things?
Great, and pretty busy these last few days for all of us
Yeah, yeah.
in a very good way.
No.
And Darren DeVivo, who has been a force in New York radio for more than 40 years. You can catch his show, Noises from the Valley, that is the Hudson Valley, on Friday nights from 7 to 11 at WKZE 98.1 or 105.9 or at WKZE.com. And Darren, how is it going?
Things are going good. Things are going good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dungeon Lane.
And Kit O'Toole, podcaster, educator, music journalist, author of several books, including Songs We Were Singing, guided tours through the Beatles' lesser known tracks. I always have a problem with that lesser known tracks thing because,
I know you do.
and Michael Jackson FAQ, all that's left to know about the King of Pop. And I gather you did an interview with my co-author this week.
Yes, I did. I did. We had a great talk about Paul and MJ. So it
Because
was a
Michael
lot of fun.
Jackson figures into Volume 3 pretty prominently at
Yes,
times.
yes, indeed.
So,
Hmm.
okay, so and today we are, as you may have guessed, going to be talking about the Boys of Dungeon Lane. This, by the way, is our 460th show. And
Oh,
yeah, collect them all. And please hit subscribe wherever you're watching it and like if you like it, and go back and check out the other 459. Um, so, yeah, we'll be talking about the album, but first, we've got some news from Ken, although only a little bit of the news Ken has. Ken is going to do another one of his news specials on his own channel because there's just too much news, right?
This is true. I kind of advised everybody here that if I was to do all the news that I have here, between reviewing the album, my news, and the bit that we should be talking about, the biggest events of the last couple of weeks, Paul on SNL, Paul on the last Stephen Colbert show, and we really have to say something about the passing of Jack Douglas. Let's just talk about those on this show, and everything else will be on my channel. You won't miss out on anything. So that way, this won't turn into a really long show. We only reserve that for Peter Jackson. So, yeah. So I figured we just start by talking about those three things, just having a conversation, not necessarily being it news. But obviously, Paul was on the very last episode for the season at SNL, performing three songs. He did Days We Left Behind, as well as Band on the Run, and closing the show with Coming Up. And after the show, and we can see this online, I'm sure many of you know this, he also performed two Beatles songs. He did Help and Drive My Car. So, in addition to all that, he appeared in the opening of the show, and he was in a sketch where he played an auto repairman. So, before we talk about the sketches, what did we all think of the performances, and were you happy with the songs that were chosen? Why don't we start with Kit?
Yeah, I actually wrote a bit about this online because I felt that, he was a number of people wrote, I'm sure you've all seen it, some, oh, he sounded terrible, he should retire, blah, blah, blah. Um, I really, if you are familiar at all with Paul's work, and I'm sure if you're watching this, I assume you are, and you've seen him live, in recent years. I didn't think he sounded that much different than what he sounded like before. I thought you know the choices were fine. I mean, I thought coming up was kind of a nice surprise.
Hmm.
Band on the Run, I mean, it's fine. Everybody knows it, and it was great to hear the audience. You could hear them really reacting in the background, which seemed to energize him and the band. So in some ways, I think, we've heard it a lot, but on the other hand, it is, a big favorite. And it would make sense for him to play, obviously, a cut from the new album.
Hmm.
I was it, but and it's the single, it's the first single, so
Right.
makes sense that he would play it. But I thought he really fed off the energy in the audience because in addition to quotes regular people, there were a lot of VIPs there, and a lot of friends, and you could hear him really reacting to their enthusiasm. So
Right.
yeah. So so I thought the choices were okay.
Were you at all disappointed that he didn't do a second song from the new album?
I didn't really expect it. It would have been nice. I mean, if he'd
Hmm.
done, I mean, we'll get into it in a minute, but if he'd done something like Come Inside, maybe a bit of a rocker.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, it wasn't that big of a surprise to me. I figured he'd probably just do one song because, he likes to give the people what they want.
This is so.
Hmm.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, I thought it would have been. I was partly expecting that maybe Ringo would turn up, and
Hmm.
and do the duet with him, but that didn't happen. And yeah, I was okay with the song choices. I'm now, I'm used to the way his voice sounds. I understand that he is an 83-year-old man, and you know, it's kind of a weird thing that, Ringo actually is in quite good voice these days. And a point where Ringo was in better voice than Paul was never on my bingo card. But
Hmm.
the thing is that unlike Ringo, Ringo does his shows and he paces himself and he has other people singing three or four songs where he takes a break. And Paul does like a 3-hour show and he's been doing it for 30 some odd years.
Hmm.
And that takes a toll on your voice. And, maybe he should have done something to take more care of it. I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't have even mattered. Maybe it's more a matter of, the DNA. I mean, who knows? The thing is, I've come around to them. You've heard me discuss his voice and other things he should do. I've never said he should retire, but I've always thought, maybe he should sort of adopt the blues growl, or something like that. Um, I've come around to really feeling that, like, okay, you know what? This is his voice now, and in live performances, it's I find it a little bit difficult, but on records, on new records, doesn't bother me as much. First of all, because they do well, we'll get into that with this album, but they do a lot to sort of mitigate the wear and tear on his that shows on his voice. But it's also new stuff, and that to me is the more important thing than the performances. And but I mean, you just sort of accept it as like I don't really believe in telling people they should retire, and I haven't done it, and I won't do it. Um, rather than telling him he should retire, the alternative is like, don't listen if you don't think you can deal with, and I mean, let's face it. I mean, he had one of the most sort of supple voices in rock, and that's why we're reacting to, what we're reacting to. But like if he were any number of lead singers for various bands, it wouldn't matter if it got a little bit, frayed. But in his case, his was what it was, and now it is this, and I don't know. I'm learning to live with it. Like I said, bothers me less with new material because it's the material that I'm interested in. The one thing I wanted to say about coming up was that because it was at the end of the show and therefore after midnight, it technically was the 46th anniversary of his Saturday Night Live debut when he played the Coming Up video and was interviewed by Father Guido Sarducci,
Oh,
Right.
wow.
a section I've just finished writing about in volume 3.
Mhm.
So for me, it was really kind of timely because I had just, been, revisiting those tapes and writing about it. And that here it was, he was playing it. And I sort of looked at my watch and said, wait, it's the 17th. It's the actual anniversary
Mhm.
of him doing it. So I thought that was really a nice touch, and I don't think it was accidental.
No.
Um,
Do you think he
and
knew?
I,
You
I
think
think
he
he knew.
knew?
I think he
Okay.
knew,
Right.
And the other thing is the two songs after the show was over that the audience got to hear, "Help" and "Drive My Car." Really glad that they put them up
Yeah.
online because it's nice to have them. So that
Mhm.
was that's my feeling about SNL.
Okay. Darren, your
Yes.
reaction.
Uh, Admittedly, my reaction is based on having watched clips online after the fact, because as I reach my older years, staying awake is not something I'm very good at, and I slept through Saturday Night Live. And I think that night I was watching the Mets game, and something told me the way this team's playing right now, you're going to be asleep soon. No, seriously. Something told me I should set an alarm of some sort, or some. So I don't recall, but whatever, it didn't happen, and I did not see either Colbert or Saturday Night Live live. Most of the Saturday Night Live stuff I've caught, in video clips and going back on YouTube. Um, I do have to say one thing though, as much as Paul getting a third song, which is unusual, I'm pretty sure it's unusual. It's always two songs, I think. I don't really watch Saturday Night Live that often
Not with
anymore.
him. Not with him. When it's a really big act like that, they can let them have a third song.
Right. But I did think to myself, it would have been nice if there was a fourth song, like one of the Beatles tunes, because a Beatles song didn't make the main broadcast,
Right.
which I thought was interesting that it wasn't a Beatles song, at least one Beatles song that was during the broadcast. And what would it have been to give him a fourth song? After all, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to annoy some people with this comment. The Saturday Night Live is going into one of its super unfunny phases right now. And what would it have been to drop a skit? The McCartney skit that he was in was poor. They couldn't come up with better lines from McCartney. The dippity do I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of funny. It wanted to be very funny, but it just wasn't well written. But anyway, as for the performances, a lot of people complaining about his voice, and I've been guilty of doing that through the years. But I'm at the point right now when I'm saying, people, this isn't you're just it's just occurring to you that he's in his 80s now and his voice. You know, I detected something wasn't right with his voice as far back as Tripping the Live Fantastic.
Hmm.
You
Huh.
listen to that album, and Paul has trouble with the really heavy rock scream what was once a strength on Wings Over America. You hear him strain on during that tour.
Hmm.
Wasn't aware of it at the time. It didn't, but if you go back today, he's straining on those performances on Tripping the Live Fantastic.
Keep in mind that was the first time he toured in 10 years.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. But I mean, I think that Paul is probably guilty of and he's most musicians today, older musicians today, are probably all guilty of this. Some degree of abuse to the vocals. Smoking, pot smoking is rough on the voice. You know, when Paul did tour, giving it 110% every night. You know, and it started to me to become obvious when I'd listened to the live albums. I think at the time the Paul is Live came out was the first time that even listening to it as a brand new album, I'm like, he does not sound good. And years later went back and listened to Tripping the Life Fantastic, and I'm like, I hear it here too. You know, when he's trying to get up there, like with Band on the Run, to go all the way up to where what was no problem for him in the 70s was a problem now, but we weren't, you know, he seemed to conquer some of that though, whether he was going for some therapy or, and I was amazed at how great he sounded, like the Good Evening New York City album, the City Field shows and the late, you know, around the time of Memory Almost, the Fireman album and Memory Almost Full, the last Fireman album. But he's in his 80s now, and we've already heard him struggle. You know, the what was it, was it 2012 when he was on Saturday Night Live and it was an anniversary show, or
it was the 40th anniversary show.
Yeah, and that was, you know,
that was rough.
Better now, I think he did than he did then.
Yes, I agree.
You know, he should retire. You know what? You should retire is what he's an artist. He's a songwriter. Yeah, I agree totally with what Allan said. Live performances probably, maybe he shouldn't do them, or maybe only these special events that he does. And in the studio, you know, I know there are ways that you could sing softer. You could sing with different manipulation. And I'm not talking auto-tune. Because I don't know if you guys detect it. I really don't detect much of it on the album. But what I do detect is effects on the voice. Mic placement, I know there's different ways that you could manipulate the voice, sing soft, maybe even sing the song in portions and not like a one shot straight through, and pick the best takes and put them all together. It is what it is now. You know, the majority of the people who were there in the audience, the people, you know, he could fart the song out and people are going to go out of their mind. You know what I mean?
I'd pay to see that.
So, I mean, it was like, you know, we're over it now. You know, yeah, he hasn't sounded like he used to for years. Let's be thankful he's out there, you know, and look at everyone else around. I mean, Ringo is, I say this with all the love, he's a freak of nature. Ringo sounds fantastic. And one artist that I could think of that I'm a huge fan of, that his voice is, I think, better now than it was when he was younger, was David Gilmour. He used to be in Pink Floyd. Mm-hmm. Gilmour now live is like, wow, this guy's closing in on 80 himself. But I mean, Paul Simon,
yeah,
he's, you know, but he's doing music and performing in a way that it's works, but his voice is gone. Roger Daltrey's voice was shot. I don't care
when
in recent, he sounded better more recent years.
Because I saw him last year in concert. I thought he sounded fantastic.
I think he's improved, which means I think he really has also worked hard at recovering. But his voice was shot a while ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I could even, like, you know, who's another one that I mean, David Lee Roth. I'm not much of a Van Halen, David Lee Roth. I mean, this is going to happen with age.
Yeah.
So at this point, shut up with the McCartney comments so that he should retire. You know? All right, maybe he should. I think he should be working in the studio more. I'd like to see. I wish he didn't take 5 years to do this record. He was been piecing together here and there. I don't think all these tours were that necessary. You know, concentrate on studio work. That's his, you know, when all is said and done, he's going to go down as being one of the greatest songwriters in modern music history. Compose stuff, you know, He's stopped with the classical music. He's, I'd like to see him do, another fireman type album. And this record's a perfect example of within the confines of a studio. Yeah, he sounds old, but the material works and the recording techniques, he's made a significant album here at this age. Let's forget how he sounded on a television broadcast. Well, also a lot of artists don't necessarily sound their best on television. But as for the Colbert stuff, that one, I'm sorry, I missed that. I think that was a combination of I forgot and was probably asleep. But what I have heard of that, it sounded like it was a really special moment. And my homework is to catch up, which I'll do eventually on stuff that I haven't I've lost out on. But what I've seen of Saturday Night Live's performance, I was very happy, and I thought the song selection was good. I was happy that he did Coming Up, and because that's like a song he's played a lot live, but not that much. That it's one of those more popular songs that every once in a while we don't hear for a while, and I was surprised he did the one new song, and thankfully he did that, because if he followed the Ringo Starr tour book of a book of song selection, you ignore your new material. So, and I understand Ringo's not doing any new songs on these first shows of this current tour.
Actually,
am I wrong?
He's doing Choose Love. So it's not a new song, but it's probably the new arrangement of Choose Love.
I read something where there was no. Okay, they were probably wrong. Okay, good.
Remind me next time not to follow you.
Well,
I just want to say, because, sometimes I get so sick and tired of hearing the issue about his voice. For one thing, the performances were fairly good, I think, on the show. He really sounded good on Days We Left Behind. And that particular song, when he's singing in falsetto, it suits his voice well. He controlled it well. I thought it was a really good performance. Ben on the Run was good. I'm not going to say it was fantastic, but it's a tough song to sing. And, I would have preferred myself if he did 2 new songs, but, he is a crowd pleaser. He wants to play stuff that people want to hear. And I'm glad that he closed the show with Coming Up, which is a really great song to do live. But as far as this issue with Ringo and Paul, just remember, the songs that Ringo sings, he's in a limited range.
Right.
They're not written in such a way where he's got to sing very high and very low, or that he's got to scream his vocals. His songs are much easier to sing, as well as the fact that you brought up, Darren, that, he sings, what is it, 11, 12 songs in a concert, and everybody else gets to sing their songs, so he gets to have his voice rested during the show. Paul, after the whole Wings period, when Wings had Denny Lane singing 5 songs in a show, once we're getting into 89, 90, Paul's singing every song.
Yeah.
And a lot of the songs are in an upper register. He's screaming on a lot of the songs. He's doing 2.5 to 3 hour shows over a long period of time. That could affect your voice. So, and at the same time, and I've had conversations about this. In fact, just one with the cameraman Mike Nair on my my YouTube channel. There's a lot of artists in their 80s, who sound fantastic because they're not singing the kind of songs that Paul sings. They're not singing songs where they have to scream. You take somebody like Tom Jones, who sounds phenomenal at his age, or Paul Anka, or I think Roger Daltrey recently. Colin Blunstone from the Zombies, who's someone who very few people give enough credit for, one of the greatest vocalists in rock. He's working his voice, but he doesn't have the kind of songs that Paul McCartney has to sing. And he's not doing 3 hour shows. And so that could explain why McCartney's voice has sounded the way that it has. I've gotten used to it. I'm not kidding myself. But there's also a thing and Mike Nair and I were talking about this, and I think I've mentioned this here. There's something about Paul where at the beginning of a concert, he's straining a bit.
Yeah.
He's very shaky. But as the concert goes on, he gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
I've noticed
I
that
agree.
with some artists, they are that way, which also explains why when he's doing a TV broadcast and he's only got one song to sing or two songs to sing, he hasn't had a chance to really warm up.
Mhm.
So to get the full effect of what Paul really sounds like today, you really need to see a full concert.
Hmm.
Okay. And I will agree with you, Darren, about 89, 90, his voice was kind of rough. But I also know that in like if you listen to back in the US, his
Oh,
voice is
yeah.
fantastic on there.
Yeah. He
Mhm.
bounced
Okay.
back that tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 2010s, he still sounded great. And even if you see him now, a few years ago when he played Glastonbury, he sounded really good.
Mhm.
Depends on each show.
Mhm.
You know, I talked to Tom Frangione who saw Paul at the Ballroom in New York City last year for several shows. He was right up front. He said he sounded fine.
Mhm.
So it all depends upon the show. And I'm not making up excuses here. No, he doesn't sound like he did in the Beatle years or the 70s. But look, the other thing is, at this point, we should be so happy that he's alive and healthy.
Mhm.
The fact that he wants to share any part of his life anymore with us, same thing with Ringo, we should be grateful for.
Mhm.
If I was about to turn 84, and I ask everybody who's watching this question, would you rather spend time with your spouse and your kids and your grandkids and go traveling, or would you rather, tour and perform in front of thousands of people? Now, Paul loves that.
Mhm.
He really genuinely enjoys it.
Yeah.
And he loves making music and writing new music. He even said recently he's going to be writing. He loves writing. He'll never stop writing. This is what he loves to do. We should be grateful that he loves to do this and wants to share it with us.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean we have to say everything he does is great, but he's already given us so much.
Hmm.
All the Beatles have. Anything we get now is a blessing.
Yep.
So that's just how I feel about this. I'm fed up with people saying he should hang it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
If he's enjoying himself doing what he's doing, he should keep on doing it.
Absolutely.
Anyway, nobody's mentioned, we should bring this up. It was a big surprise that Chad Smith from the Red Hot
Oh,
Chili
yeah.
Peppers was the drummer
Mhm.
there. Nobody knows why Abe Laboriel Jr. wasn't there.
I have heard one thing very recently. It was a family issue. That's all I've heard. I don't know if illness or.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
And of the video clips I've seen, I don't think it occurred to me. Chad Smith is a clone of Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's been an
Well,
ongoing
that was
joke.
what the
Yeah,
intro
was it
is
been-
about. When you catch
Yeah.
up with the whole
Yeah.
show, you'll
Mhm.
see.
Yeah, it's spooky. Mhm.
Now, I know Paul's been friends with Chad Smith for a few years now, but was it just some coincidence that he happened to be the drummer the same week that Will Ferrell is hosting? I don't know,
We
but
Don't know.
it and thought you got to get Chad. This would be funny. And now I didn't see this anything other part of the performance show other than the clips of Paul's performance. Did they somehow get at some point Will Ferrell and Chad Smith together?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, they did.
That I
yeah,
didn't.
Mhm.
That's
yeah.
funny.
Will was playing the what do you call it? Woodblock or what
Cowbell.
was
Cowbell.
Cowbell? Yeah, okay. During Coming Up, and I think he came back on for help,
Mhm.
and Paul actually wanted him to come back on stage.
Yeah, he seemed to be
So
getting a real kick out of it.
yeah, and Paul sounded great on Help and Drive My Car.
Mhm.
He really
Yeah,
did.
one of those should have been put in the broadcast as well, I think.
Yeah.
So listen, we still need to talk about the album. We've got Colbert left to do. So let's move on to
Yes.
All right.
Wait,
Good.
Peter Jackson's on the phone.
we wish.
well, as far as Colbert goes, I really I enjoyed that performance, even though by the time it aired, we all knew that Paul was going to be the surprise guest. So, but still, I was really touched when he performed "Hello Goodbye" and everybody was joining in, and they turned it into sort of a New Orleans kind of style at the end, which I enjoyed,
Mm.
and I'm sure people have seen. There's footage that's been
Yeah.
posted of Paul and the band playing "When the Saints Come Marching In." I thought that
With
was
Paul
cool.
on trumpet.
With Paul on
Yes.
trumpet, that's right, exactly. But I thought that image at the end where Stephen and Paul were standing at the switch to turn
Right.
off the lights, and that Stephen said to Paul, like gestured, "You do it." I thought that was
Yeah.
a really nice touch. I thought it was like, we'll get a little teary from that. I
Yeah.
mean, I just thought
Yeah.
that was a perfect ending. The interview was fine. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a particularly outstanding interview. I mean, it covered a lot of the
Yeah.
typical stuff, but I would say just him being there, that performance, and then at the very end was, really, really nice. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend you check out
Mhm.
performances.
And since we're talking about his voice, go watch it. He sounds
Hmm.
great on Hello
Hmm.
Goodbye. He
Hmm.
really does.
I'll pass on a reaction from Adrian. We were talking about it, and he said, what was sort of interesting is that Paul was singing Hello Goodbye with Colbert's studio band, not with his own band.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
he felt that sort of, playing with, other musicians who were all first class musicians really kind of had him, on and sort of was inspiring for him. And I could see that, you know. That was just his reaction, and it made sense to me, so just
Good
passing it.
point.
Yeah. It was also very nice, since very few people are saying this, that Elvis Costello
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
was on stage with Paul
Yeah.
that's
during
right.
Hello Goodbye. And Elvis Costello performed with Stephen Colbert and the band leader, whose name escapes me. Um, and they were doing an Elvis Costello song, Jump Up, before they went into Hello Goodbye.
Mhm.
But, for those of us who wish that Paul and Elvis would do something again, well,
Mhm.
we saw him on stage there.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Darren? Oh, you said you didn't watch
Yeah, I
Colbert.
about
Yeah.
the Colbert performance.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that I liked the interview, but there's one thing that Paul said during that interview that just caught me by surprise. And Colbert asked him, "What do you think of change?" And Paul said, "I hate it."
Mm.
Hmm.
And he was referring to his phone, I think, or all the
Oh, that's
updates that
right.
he gets on his phone.
Yep.
This coming from one of four people in the world that's probably more responsible for change in the music industry than anybody else. But, I understand where he's coming from, especially with updates and how technology is constantly changing and you got to keep up with it. But it was like very ironic that he said he hates it.
Well, but also though, I mean, those four were responsible for changing the world in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
right now it's like changing back. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what he meant.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, then I'll go with that.
I
I
thought
thought
you
he
were going
should
to
have. I
say,
wish he had played, despite repeated warnings. I mean, I thought
yeah,
that would have been,
That would be nice.
that
yeah.
would have been great.
Mm.
I thought you were going to say, "Okay, Boomer," for a minute there.
So we should talk about Jack Douglas.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a big surprise to us. I know like a day or two before there was a video that was posted. It was actually on his Facebook page where he's in the hospital and he looked absolutely terrible. And for a moment there, I couldn't believe that was him.
Yeah.
But he died at the age of 80 from lymphoma. And he's known for so much great work in the rock world, especially with the band Aerosmith. He produced 4 albums in a row from them when they really started to hit it big with Walk This Way. But But for Beatle fans, obviously you have to think of co-producing Double Fantasy with John and Yoko. And he did a sensational job. I've always loved the production behind Double Fantasy, but he really goes all the way back to the Imagine album with John, where he was an engineer, and he continued to work with him, and then later on was brought back for Double Fantasy. And yeah, some other things he's talked about um, having written a song with John that's never come out called Street of Dreams. We don't know how it goes at all. He's never sung it. We've never heard a demo of it. Be nice to know if there is any recording of that somewhere. Um, and he also was responsible for bringing Grow Old With Me to Ringo. He worked on that on Ringo's album, and they got Paul to play bass on it, and they brought in a little bit of George, some of his guitar playing to mix in with it. And so it was kind of a Beatles reunion. But that was another contribution that Jack Douglas brought to Beatle fans. But he's produced so many people. Oh, there was also bringing the guys from Cheap Trick to the Double Fantasy sessions too. Um, Bunny Carlos and Rick Nielsen. And I've heard different stories why that version of I'm Losing You didn't make the album. One was that John really wanted the album to sound more MOR or adult contemporary, that he was trying to talk to the people that he grew up with. Although Yoko stuff was very edgy on the album, but they kind of felt that it didn't fit that recording, you know. So I don't know what you guys want to say about Jack Douglas, but I did have the opportunity to interview the man. This was in 2018, right across the street from the Dakota at Strawberry Fields on a bench.
Oh,
And he couldn't have been nicer. He talked about his whole history with John, the double fantasy sessions, how they were kept a great big secret with all the session players. He couldn't say who the artist was for, but they were going through the songs without hearing who the lead vocalist was going to be, and they kind of figured out it was going to be John. Stuff like that, but he's a tremendous loss between Aerosmith, Cheap Trick, uh, so many people, New York Dolls,
Yeah.
you know, you name it. There's a lot of people that he produced. Darren, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I had the pleasure and honor of meeting him twice. He had come to WFUV radio station I was at in the past. In I think it was 2010 when the stripped down version of Double Fantasy came out. Now, he happened to be his wife was very tight with the DJ who was doing mornings at WFUV at the time. So she was able to get Jack because she knew him socially. She knew him as a friend. And I believe Jack lived in Rockland County where she lived, if I'm not mistaken. She was able to have him come up on her show in a very relaxed atmosphere because he knew her and he spent a considerable amount of time of the morning drive on the air. And at the time I was doing midday, so I came on at 10 a.m. after her, knowing that Jack Douglas was going to be there. I showed up at work early, which didn't happen all that often. So I just basically hung out in the studio with them, and while we were off mic, spoke. I don't recall if I asked him if I went live with Jack for a couple of questions or not. I might have, but there was a lot of conversation off mic, casual stuff that I was talking to him about. He was very forthcoming, and they played a lot of the stripped down version of the album. So that was a nice moment, and I'm surprised I don't have like an autograph, or if there is a photo. I've always been very bad at keeping track of photos that I've been in. I looked around a little online but couldn't find anything. Then I saw him at concert venue in New York City, the rooftop at Pier 17, which is located where South Street Seaport is. And my wife and I were there for a Ringo Starr, an all-star band concert. This was in 2019. And I think What's My Name would have been the next. I don't think it was out yet because that's the album that has Grow Old With Me on it, does it not?
Which one? What's My Name? Yes.
What's My Name?
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
But that hadn't come out yet. So it was the tour that came before the album's release. And I was, I had just had my second major knee injury and I was on crutches. And so my arrival caused a bit of a ruckus because I'm tripping over chairs with my crutches and not Mr. Graceful to begin with. And I finally settled down, my wife and I turn around and who's sitting behind me but Jack Douglas.
Mm.
And I reintroduced myself from him. I think he remembered me from FUV. And he must have because he was very forthcoming about this incredible new project he just finished with Ringo that involved, I think he was being a little evasive. He couldn't maybe give too much information out, but it involved, I think without saying specifically what happened, but it was a special thing that Ringo did with John and others were involved. It was Grow Old With Me he was referring to. And he said it's coming out soon. And he was very excited about it. And and that was really nice. And I was like, I felt like I was in on something cool that was happening. And not long after that, comes What's My Name album with Grow Old With Me on it. And I was like, okay, that's what Jack had just finished the project. And was at the rooftop at Pier 17 to see Ringo. So, and I've always been familiar with his work from stuff, working with Cheap Trick, and when I was younger, I was a much bigger Cheap Trick fan than I am now. I was familiar with Jack, his work with Aerosmith. A few of my friends were really big on Aerosmith. Sad loss, and it sounds like his illness may have really hit him hard quickly because. I was flipping around on Facebook. I think I forwarded the video to you, Ken. I don't know if you saw, but I'm flipping around on Facebook, and there's that video that he took, a selfie video in a hospital bed.
Yep, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, he looked bad.
Yeah.
And I was taken back, and I think I watched it 2 or 3 times thinking, what is Jack? Oh my God, that's Jack Douglas. And it was like a selfie video. I'm not quite sure why he even put it up. And then a few days later comes the word he had passed. So it's very sad. And he's a giant of music, and may he rest in peace. And thanks for, everything.
You're here.
Did you want to say anything, Kit?
Just that, you got the sense from Jack. You guys have talked about how much he was willing to talk, and share his experiences. I just always got the sense that, of course, he was an incredible producer, did a great job, as you mentioned, on Double Fantasy. I mean, the production on that is just crystal clear and pristine. I mean, it's really, really sharp, but get the sense he was a fan too, and he would talk about the conversations that he would have with John, at the control, when they were in the control booth and all, and they would just be sitting and just, talking about all different things. And you could just tell Jack was like, even though he had worked with all these people that we'd mentioned, and as you said, he had worked with John before, but you just felt like he thought, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking, just chatting with John Lennon and working with him. And, and you just could, whenever he talked about it, you could just see that joy in his face, and I just thought that was really a great thing about him, that not only was he an incredible producer, worked with so many major artists, but that he was a music fan too. And I always really enjoyed that about him whenever he would be interviewed about working with John and Yoko.
Okay. Alan, did you want to say anything?
Not really. I think the three of you have covered it really well, and we should move on to the
Okay, I
main
just
topic.
wanted to add one thing about him because often he's told this story of, he was a huge Beatle fan when he was younger, well, his whole life. But he and his friend, who were musicians, went, they were stowaways on a boat, and they
Oh.
went all the way to England without a passport, and they were caught and they were ordered to be sent back, but it made the front page news. And when Jack talked to John, I think, for the first time around the Imagine sessions, he told that story to him. And John was familiar with the story. He said, "You were one of those Yanks?"
Crazy
So
Yank.
he knew all about it.
Crazy Yanks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I just got a quote here from Gary Van Syok, who wrote on Facebook, "R.I.P., my friend, my engineer producer extraordinaire, flat out the best effing bass sound I have ever gotten in the recording studio. Was
Mm,
1973 on Yoko's Approximately Infinite Universe." That's from Gary Van Syok.
nice.
Okay. Bruce Sugar also had some really nice things to say, having worked on What's My Name and Grow Old with Me as well. So there you go.
Okay, well, good thing we did a truncated news segment.
Yeah.
It's
Ah,
coming on
Well,
an hour.
oh my
Um,
I
God.
had a feeling that we'd speak a little bit about these three major things.
okay, so now we have an album to talk about. The Boys Dungeon Lane. So the album's been out since Friday, and we've probably all spent a lot of the weekend listening to it. And I guess I don't know, how do we want to do this? Do we want to do cut by cut? Do we want to do general impressions? What does everybody think?
How about initial impressions
Yeah.
first?
Okay. Ken, you want to start?
Sure. I remember saying to one of my guests on my YouTube channel that I was expecting this because of Days We Left Behind, the sound of that song, that this was going to be closer to Chaos and Creation. Well, this album is not what I expected,
Hmm.
but I will say before anybody freaks out, I do love the album, but this album to me has sounds and songwriting styles that I've heard on many of his albums throughout the 2000s.
Yep.
There's a little bit of chaos and creation. There's some memory almost full. Some things could have fit on Egypt Station or New or McCartney 3. There's a little bit of all of that. The only difference is who the producer is that Paul's working with. And even then, I need to know exactly what his input was, because Paul has very definite ideas for the songs that he's written. But I'm pleasantly surprised that it's a little bit of everything from the 2000s, with the feeling of like McCartney 3 or Chaos and Creation because he plays all the instruments most of the time. But anytime, one of the great things about uh, listening to Paul's albums is that each album has a different flavor or sound to it that wasn't like the previous album. Like New and Egypt Station are very different from each other, as far as I'm concerned. And then going from Egypt Station to McCartney 3 sounds very different. Well, this is kind of combining all of it
Yeah.
to me when I listen to this album. Um, and in a very, very pleasant way. So, it's still Paul. It impresses me what he's doing with his voice. I think his voice sounds absolutely phenomenal as an older voice. No, he doesn't sound like he did, like I said, in the Beatle years or the 70s. Um, but there are times when he's screaming on here, and his voice sounds great, without straining. And I'm wondering sometimes, are these just he's waiting for his best take and keeping that one? I wish I could see the whole recording process with him, but there's all these different voices, lots of different styles of music. A lot of it is more on the softer side, but there's a few songs on there that are rockers that have an edge to them. I like it overall. It took me a while for me to really look at this as a great album, which I do. Whether or not we should call it a masterpiece this soon, I don't think you should ever call an album a masterpiece so quickly. I know some people are writing it up as though it is. You got to let some time go by before you consider something a masterpiece. But I'm really impressed. It took me, I've listened in the last 3 days 10 times with my wife to this album. I wanted to make sure that I knew these songs before doing this. And I think I'm ready. But yeah, I'm very pleased with what I've heard.
Kit?
Yeah, I agree with much of what you're saying, Ken, that I expected this, with Days We Left Behind and even Home to Us. I thought this is going to be a very reflective album, perhaps, very nostalgia filled, um, and, maybe a combination of Memory Almost Full and Chaos and Creation.
Hmm.
Maybe yeah, as I said, kind of a mashing them together. And yeah, I agree. When I heard it, I was surprised. Yeah, there's definitely, like Days We Left Behind, some stuff that would not have sounded out of place on Chaos and Creation.
Hmm.
Um, and then, you get some more rockers on there that, as you mentioned, could have been on a Memory Almost Full or New or but it's an album that definitely looks back, but it also is rooted in the present. I mean, there's so many songs on here where he's clearly singing about Nancy,
Hmm.
and obviously that's where he is now in his life. So, he's at once saying he likes to travel back in time and think about, his times with his mates on walking on Dungeon Lane, and of course there are Beatles nods, both sonically and in lyrics. So he likes, he's revisiting some of that. But then he's celebrating where he is now. You definitely get that sense,
Hmm.
which is really nice. I mean, I think that's, and as you mentioned, Ken got in terms of his voice. I think he's smart on this album that there's, and I can't remember which song it is offhand now, where he even explores a bit of a lower range than I've heard him singing before.
Hmm.
I think, and then you hear some of the notes, he'll cut a little short, when he's at the top of his current range. He's using his voice in a smart way
Right.
on this album. And I think that many people said this, and I agree, that some of the songs, like Days Left Behind, his new voice fits because, it's like you're sitting, I hate to say this, but it's like sitting and at times and saying to, like, your grandfather. So that,
Hmm.
what was it like when you were young? And and
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
his voice works
Right.
in that sense.
Mhm.
And by the way, the production, I thought was interesting that it is similar to Cast and Creation in that it's very intimate. You know,
Hmm.
Once again, Paul's voice is right up front. The instrumentation, there's really not much reverb except, maybe on Mountaintop or something. But it sounds like a very intimate conversation that he's having with the listener, similar to Chaos, which I think that's a great technique, because it,
Hmm.
it draws you in as the listener.
Okay.
Okay,
Great points
Darren?
there.
Mhm.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Ken pointed out something that um, to me is so obvious. This sounds so much like pieces of every album he's done since Memory Almost Full.
Hmm.
And it makes sense then when I kind of read a little bit of the background that Paul's been working on the album in pieces. And we've been hearing that he's working with Andrew Watt for a while now. But Paul's been working on this album since 2021. And you would think that it's probably likely that some of the songs, maybe fragments of some of these songs, were written at the same time that things that ended up on New were written, or songs that were on McCartney 3. There are some similarities in the melodies. There are some similarities in the lyrics or the delivery of the lyric, the rhythmic patterns. There's one, and I'm going crazy. I've spent most of the show while we're recording looking in one eye at lyrics because I cannot for the life of me remember what song off recent albums has the line "There but for the grace of God," because that song reminded me so much when I heard "Come Inside" from the new album. "Come Inside" sounded to me, melody-wise, very similar to this tune that has the lyrics there but for the grace of God. And I'm looking through.
It's not early days. I'm just thinking maybe early days, maybe.
Yeah, I can't. But anyway, it's just one example of these things that I've listened to the album a bunch of times, and I'm taking away each listen. I've taken away something that I didn't hear before. Picking up on something that didn't catch my ear before, and even like even like songs that have a piano introduction. There's stuff on the last couple of albums that very much sound like what he was doing on this new album, which I think is just a case probably that these songs all somehow the seeds were planted and they were germinated at roughly the same period of time. I'm glad the kid pointed out the production because the production's outstanding on this album. I love the way Andrew Watt has everything up front. There's not a lot of, the drums. This is going to be a good example if you want to listen to Paul the drummer. This album is loaded with, you can listen to and examine and pick apart his drumming style because the drums are right up front on this album. I feel that this is the best album he's done since Memory Almost Full. He hasn't put out many albums since then, but I've always felt, and again, some folks will disagree with me, and that's fine, that New and Egypt Station were strong half albums, and the other half of the album, those two albums were weak. I've always felt New, when you hit the middle of New, it goes downhill. There's nothing that really jumped out at me over the second half of New. Agreed. This album is much more consistent, straight through, and I'm already finding that songs that didn't touch me the first time I listened, my opinion's changing of them now. For example, the very first listen I gave the album, I was disappointed with the way it ended. I thought this new album ended in a very blah fashion. In fact, I wasn't even aware this last song had played. It didn't have this. Something about McCartney albums always kind of came to an end with a song that was a final, whether it was a powerful ballad or something. Mm-hmm. But the last song on the album is Mama Gets By. Today I'm listening to Mama Gets By and I'm hearing a stronger melody than I heard the first time, or little nuances are jumping out at me more, changing how I feel about the album overall. I think pound for pound, it's the best batch of songs he's done in a while, and it's consistently the best album since Memory Almost Full, with a lot of room still to grow because, there's still more time to be spent with this album. And any criticisms really I have of it are petty. They're small. A song like, and I know we're not getting into the meat. Maybe I should wait.
Yeah.
On the individual songs. Let me hold off. Mm-hmm. But you could tell, I think Paul took his time with this to make sure, maybe the lyrics could be stronger, or there was care. A lot of care was put into this album. And as for reminiscing and looking back, I would bet you that Paul probably didn't set about this album being like a look down, a march down memory lane, but it started to come together like that.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the title. Therefore, maybe the extra time he spent on it, getting Ringo in there to sing prominently
Mm-hmm.
on Home to Us, rather than just a passing chorus or backing vocal.
Right.
So I guess Allan's up next. I'm very interested in. I wanted to read Allan's review when it's published on what he thought of the album.
Yeah, I've reviewed it for the Wall Street Journal. That should turn up sometime this week. When I first got it, I had mixed feelings about it. And I think that, everything that we've actually all been saying about getting to live with it and becoming familiar with it, you can see, for me at least, how that sort of happens, because the two tracks that stood out for me far and above the others were Days We Left Behind and Home to Us. But we knew those, I mean, those were already really familiar. So it wasn't necessarily that they were better than all the rest. It's just that they jumped out because they were familiar. And the ones that didn't, as I listened to the album more times, they all began to sort of equalize a bit,
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, at first I wasn't that struck by Mama Gets By, and I wasn't that crazy about As You Lie There. I mean, I had read about it and what it was about, all that stuff, and it just, you know, I don't know, in Lost Horizon as well. I'd read the whole story of Eddie Klein finding it and, was sort of curious, but it hadn't really grabbed me at first. But, as I've gone through the album numerous times, they've all taken on each one sort of a life of its own, and I've heard, more and more in them, and then, begin to sort of listen to the just sort of, a little bit technically, about the voice and stuff, because apart from Days We Left Behind, and maybe a little bit Down South, because that's pretty much solo as well. Uh, I didn't hear, the weakness in his voice through most of the songs, but he's got doubled vocals, he's got harmonies. They've and he's written to, like, pretty much what I said when I reviewed McCartney 3. He's written to his strengths. He's written songs that he knows he can do. And even at that, as Ken pointed out, there is some screaming on it, some like really full voice, helter-skelter kind of screaming. And I was kind of surprised by that because, I was thinking, well, but this is why his voice is, having the problems it has, because he does that, But on the other hand, he made it work. But what I found that I haven't really seen mentioned that much anywhere, I get into it a bit in my review. There are a lot of references to other things in this album, and not just Beatles things. I mean, obviously you've got the opening, chord undulations of I'm the Walrus in Mountaintop. And you have that, oh yeah, from I'll Get You in Down South. But and we've talked before about this isn't a musical one necessarily, but the Four Yorkshiremen in Home to Us, right? Other things, when I listen to As You Lie There, the opening of it, I used to walk past your house and look up at your window. That, to me, absolutely the Shangri-Las.
Ah,
The spoken intro, they used to do that all the time, and this is the kind of song that they would have done, kind of. It's a little more sophisticated than what they would have done, but a teenage romance song, yeah, absolutely. And
Oh
then
I
wow.
I thought
uh,
of No Reply.
what?
Mhm.
I thought of No Reply because of that
Well, no reply because looking
lyric.
in the window and all that stuff, but the spoken part to me evoked Shangri-La's completely. And listen to listen to it with those exact same words, but with the Shangri-La's voices, and you'll
Yeah.
hear what I mean. Um, uh, let's see, Come Inside. There was just something about that at the very beginning that sounded like The World Tonight to
Hmm.
me.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Um, And the biggest surprise probably is, Mama Gets By. So, you start originally thinking, this is Paul and his mom, but it's not Paul and his mom because, Papa gets high. We don't get that impression of his father as having been, dissolute in any way. So he's telling a story, and I think he's referred to it as being kind of like, Lady Madonna. It's about someone he doesn't know. It's, that kind of situation. But even though in this marriage that he's describing, they seem to be happy, or at least she seems to be happy, and he seems to be who knows what, high, I guess. You think about, the opening chords, a little bit dissonant, and exactly what the chords are is Carly Simon's That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be. Go back and listen to that and listen to this. The chords are almost exactly the same, and the subject matter is very similar too. So there's a lot of these things that, to me were references that, maybe they were accidental, coincidental, but there were so many of them that I kind of think that he was, playing a little interesting game here with, referring to or alluding to earlier music, and in the case of of Home to Us, earlier Monty Python sketches. Um,
It's funny how you and I thought of that. I don't know if
Mhm.
anybody else watching thought of that sketch, but
hmm. Yeah, so but I mean, I'm not saying that he's copying these songs. I mean, these are like references that last maybe a couple of seconds, and then
Right.
he's on to his own thing. And compositionally, I think, these are all very strong and very original, and I think he's really sort of he's comfortable doing what he does, and a lot of these are stronger than songs that he wrote when he was younger, when he was, also probably comfortable, but, let things by that maybe he shouldn't have, I thought all told, it was a really strong album. I liked McCartney 3 an awful lot too. Um, I think this may be stronger than that. And I gather that you guys do as well. So, anyway, so where shall we go from here?
That's a
if you
Chicago
want to
song.
pick,
I'm sorry.
how about just going through the songs that impress you the most, or
Yeah.
maybe didn't impress you?
Mhm.
Um, start with Kit.
Okay. Well, as far as the highlights for me, Days We Left Behind. And yeah, I know we were already, as Alan was mentioning, we were already familiar with it, but listening to it in context, the whole album, I think just made it even better. I think it's some of his best lyrics um, in a while. Really makes you think, and I just in fact some of it even reminded me a bit of. Uh, we talked about Ringo's latest album and then the song Long, Long Road and the whole issue of change, accepting change, nothing stays the same. And this is a little bit like that in that he's saying, basically nothing lasts forever. You can look back and on those days, but nothing built to last. You could. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And so I really and the other lines I love the see the boys of Dungeon Lane along the Mersey shore. Some of them will feel the pain, but some were meant for more. I mean, he's reflecting on people he grew up with that some made it out of there, some didn't. It's very it's really reflective, and I like that. Mountaintop is so crazy that I like it. It's just what a roller coaster ride. That's a bit like that could have been on McCartney 3 because of its experimental kind of sound. I mean, it is trippy. And that affected, almost 84-year-old man is writing something like this where it's a total trip. Like, good for him, I mean, I liked it. I liked the effect on his voice, that kind of flanging the effect.
Yeah.
That was very cool. I mean, it fit the theme of the song. And some of the lyrics are a bit evocative of like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, pumpkin pies in the skies, also try to hypnotize, and and then when it speeds up at the end and just goes into this full-on rock thing, I was just like, yeah, good good for him. I mean, as I said, it's just not what I expected at all. I would never pick that song as being from this album. Come Inside, I really liked as well. In fact, I think he could have even started the album with this because you are kind of coming inside his mind on this album. I think he could have, and it's just a good rocker. We've talked about, even Paul shouting at one point, which sounded, again, didn't quite expect him to do that at this stage, but man, he could do it. And saying step right up and take a look, my life's an open book. And that's exactly what this album is. I mean, he is kind of opening up to you. Home to Us, we've talked a bit about that before, but that's one of my favorite tracks still off the album. I love that duet with Ringo. I'm so glad they're finally doing an honest to God duet, not just as Darren was saying, one singing background or something. And the lyrics I love that are kind of saying, hey, Liverpool was far from perfect, but it was home to us. And finally, Mama Gets By. I was a bit like Allan and I think Darren, you may have mentioned it too, that I wasn't crazy about this track in the beginning. But the more I listened to it and the more I lived with it, I found myself humming the melody, particularly the "But She Loves Him" section with her heart and soul. And I thought, okay, the fact that I'm, the melody stuck in my head like that shows perhaps it's a more effective song than I initially gave it, credit for. And yeah, I was a little confused too, Allan. You were saying, who is this about? Yeah, you're thinking it's not really about his mother, and it's just sort of, I guess, a character, as you said, continuing from Lady Madonna, and or if Eleanor Rigby got married. I mean, something along those lines.
It's sort of like, since it's narrated by the child,
right?
It could be the baby at Lady Madonna's breast.
Yeah, exactly. So good point. Exactly. So very intriguing song. It really goes in different directions musically and in melody than you expect. So those were the highlights for me. I just, as you lie there, I just wasn't as crazy about. I thought, and maybe you touched on part of why, Allan, that the spoken stuff, that it just doesn't quite sound how do I say it? Genuine for me. I don't know
Hmm.
what it is. I think maybe if he cut that part out and just gone right into the song, but just saying, as you lie there, do you think of me? Do you think of me? I mean, I don't know. Maybe if he had read it in a more emotional tone, but I think maybe you nailed it, Alan. Now that you say about the Shangri-Las, now I can't get that out of my head, and it's true. You could picture them doing that.
Hmm.
And some of the others, I'm not going to go through all of them, but Never Know. I mean, they're fine, but they just didn't strike me as much as the ones that I just mentioned.
Hmm. Interesting.
Darren, you want to pick?
Um, I want to just point out a couple of the things that I felt the album that I uh, uh, that I wasn't nuts for. Again, I think I was going to mention this before. Um, being very picky here. Paul has this tendency with with the backing vocals, which he does. And
Mm-hmm.
had this been some years ago, probably would have been Linda and Denny Lane and the Wings days. But Paul has this tendency of repeating refrains, which he does a lot.
Yes,
You
I
know,
agree.
I just saw my reflection, and then there was a bird. He does that a lot. And that's after a while, it's like, Paul, you don't have to repeat, it seems like he's constantly doing that. And a good example is, and can't remember the name of the song on a recent album where she looks so fine, so fine, so fine, which I think is a Memory Almost Full track. And
Could be. Not sure.
it'll come to me at 2 a.m.
So Your Sunshine, maybe?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, yes. She looks so fine, so fine, so fine. He does a lot of that on this album. Picayune, little criticism. There's also one track, and I hope I made a note of it here, on which one I'm talking about. The tune needs like grungier guitar.
Hmm.
Maybe Lost Horizon might be the one. Um, I would like to hear him play. Yeah, he goes out, he's laying into the drums throughout the whole album. A little more of a crunchier guitar on a song here or there. I felt it would really work on some of these songs. It was a more upbeat album, which I think someone's alluded to already, than I anticipated it would be from the original. I think when we first heard Days We Left Behind, something I had read said that this was sort of indicative of what the album was going to be like, but it's not. There's the upbeat stuff, mid tempo, handful of slower songs, which you pointed out. And I mean, on my very first listen, I know that I liked Lost Horizon, excuse me. A big highlight for me was Ripples in a Pond.
Mm-hmm.
And then the middle part of the album really was holding me. Down South, I think, is one of the highlights of the album. And I like the lyrics. I like the story he's telling. Probably talking about either with George or John. I think he had said
It's
this
all,
might be the song he's referring to, maybe about being with George,
it's George.
where
Yeah.
they where they discuss music and guitars, and they're going down south together. That's a real highlight for me. I like We Too. Come Inside, I enjoy it a lot. I think First Star of the Night is the sleeper on the album. That's a really nice song that I think in time is going to be a favorite of mine. But to me, as I'm listening, Salesman Saint, I remember feeling this is Lavatory Lil too. I don't know why. Maybe
Hmm.
because of the lyrics, maybe because the titles, Lavatory Lil, Salesman Saint, and it just didn't work. And then Mama Gets By on first listen disappointed me, and the album's over. And I thought that's a really disappointing way for this album to end. But now, like I said, Mama Gets By is catching my attention now a little bit more. I think Salesman Saint maybe is the weak point on the album. Not weak enough, though, for me to feel, boy, I can't handle this song. Or, Paul, I'll always think of how Gratitude on Memory Almost Full really dragged the album down from being one of my favorite of all of Paul's albums. I don't feel that way that strongly about Salesman Saint, but to me, that's one of the weaker parts of this album. I think all told, it's like I've said a few times, very consistent, strongest record he's done in a while. And I like As You Like There. It seems to be the lightning rod of this album for everyone. Um, I was there. I was taken back a bit hearing the album begin with a spoken word introduction. Not something Paul does. I think he takes some musical chances. It's one of a couple of songs on the album that has changes in them where they shift tempos and melodies, and that's refreshing. Is Mountaintop, I think, the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, where there's, and I like that. And I like the, and I didn't make in my notes here. I didn't make where you hear the sound of a tape being rewound.
Yeah.
Which is that also Mountaintop?
I think so.
I didn't.
No, I
write
think that
down.
was Lost Horizon. Oh no, it wasn't. I
Yeah,
thought it was Lost Horizon, but no, it's
I don't remember.
it's kind of a strange way to
It's
end
We
the song,
Too.
but it's cool. It's just
okay.
song's
Yeah,
over. He's gonna
it is We
rewind
Too.
now. And just something to me that was very simple but touching. Him saying it's raining in Costa Rica right at the beginning of First Star of the Night, and then the lyric is it's raining. I thought it's a very simple touch that was very effective. And one of the little gems. McCartney's albums are, for me, always known for having these little subtle things that you hear months later.
Yeah.
Little cute little touches that just make these songs special. So I'll tell the people who, not the people stop me in the street and ask me this, but when you're talking late period McCartney, to me the number one go-to is Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, and Memory Almost Full has really grown on me over the years. This is close to Memory Almost Full in my book, and I think Paul stepped up with the songwriting. It was one of the complaints I had about Egypt Station was that lyrically it was not a strong record. Paul just kind of concentrated elsewhere and didn't worry about what the words were. That's not the case with this album.
Right.
It's musically interesting like McCartney 3 was, but I think ultimately it's a stronger collection of songs than McCartney 3. And it's proof positive that as his voice has gotten older, he's figured out how to use what it is now as a strength to the material that he's recording.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty pleased with this new record. I mean, it's not going to knock Ram or Band on the Run out of my CD player or turntable. That would be hard to do, and it's probably not going to knock Chaos and Creation or
Memory Almost
Flaming
Full.
Pie out of the, or if I really want to crank it up, my go-to is Run Devil Run. But this is a genuine piece of art that is one more little example of the genius of Paul McCartney, the musician who shouldn't be even considering retiring.
So Ken, your turn.
Okay. We just had to take a little break. I thought I heard ripples in a pond.
What?
Oh!
Anyway,
I'm cutting it.
That's good though. I like that.
This album is chock full of really great songs. And this is one of those albums that take a while for you to really get to know. Almost every single album I've listened to in my life, there's a few songs that you like instantly. There are songs that, you like after a few listens. And there are songs that really you have to listen many times before you really get it. That may sound to some people like you're forcing yourself, but what happens if eventually you do end up enjoying those songs? But I like most of the songs that are on this album. Unlike Kit, I happen to like um, As You Lie There. I think it's a very interesting way to open up an album.
Mhm.
And even if you don't think that Paul sounded genuine in the spoken word, he's never really done that before. And I just like the fact that he threw you a curve as soon as you heard this album. But this album is loaded with songs that remind me of other songs, like Alan was saying. And when I hear As You Lie There, when he's starting to do the chorus and he's screaming and it's the same note over and over, I'm hearing Nod Your Head.
Mm. Mhm.
You play those two songs back to back, they're
Mm.
very similar. I
Mm.
love the edginess of it. I love the screaming vocals. Very odd ending
Yeah.
coming out of the screaming, and then all of a sudden you've got the acoustic guitar and nothing else.
Yeah.
And I like weird endings like that.
Mhm.
It also kind of reminds me a bit of um, at the end of that song, he goes back to the very first verse of the song. It takes me back to a song like Pipes of Peace, which is exactly what Paul did in that song at the very end. That's just how my mind works.
Mhm.
Days We Left Behind, I would go so far to say that that is destined to be a classic, as long as the public knows it, which is key.
Yeah.
So, Ripple in a Pond. Now, there are certain songs that Paul has put out that are bonus tracks on New and Egypt Station that are really catchy, 3, 4 minute pop songs, very well constructed, could have been hits in the 70s or 80s. They could have ended up on New or Egypt Station. They were good enough to make the albums, but they were left off. That's what Ripples in a Pond is like to me. If you know a song like a song like Turned Out from the new album, or Get Started from Egypt Station, this song is in the same ballpark to me. Well sung, very well written, great guitar line, very catchy. I like it just as much as I like those other songs. So if there's any fault that I find in this particular album, it's that there's very little that Paul's doing here that he hasn't done before. And it's not like I'm expecting him to have the most groundbreaking album. You don't have to make a groundbreaking album for it to be a great album. But, like I said, As You Lie There, that introduction with the spoken word, no, that's something a little bit different. Um, so I like that song for that reason. I like Ripples in a Pond. Lost Horizon took me at least 5 or 6 listens before I got to remember how the song went. But it's very enjoyable. It has a real nice rock feel to it. Um, Mountaintop is kind of weird. I do love that gem at the end. I just wish that it went on longer because it's only about 30 seconds. Um, Down South, I like a lot, although I wish that the song was a little bit longer. It's only about 2 minutes and 18 seconds, considering that this is about remembering his times with George Harrison, talking about rock and roll, talking about guitars on the bus, all that. I can easily see Paul in concert during his acoustic set doing Down South alone, nothing else. You don't need anything else. It's a really good song. And I like the oh yeahs and the references to Twist and Shout, which are cute. Um, what else do we have here? Um, Come Inside, great rock song, really edgy. I love it. That's a song that kind of reminds me of a more up-tempo and more rocking Who Cares? That's what I think of when I hear Come Inside here. Um, We Too, We Too and Never Know are like the sleepers on this album for me. It took me a while to get to like those songs. I really like We Too now. Very simple song. I like the very Beatle guitar sounds that he plays on it on lead guitar. Um, and it's enjoyable. It's passable. It's nice. I'm glad it's there. I don't consider it a great song, but I'm glad that it's on there. Um, and Never Know, I still have some problem with it. Probably the only song on the album that I do have a problem with. But the one thing I do like is how they're adding it's either a recorder or a flute in there, and
Mhm.
it's got this
Yeah.
Irish feel
Yeah.
towards the end that goes on. They're jamming for about a minute or so, so that's a little bit different. Um, Home to Us is great. It's catchy as hell. It could have been a hit record a long time ago. I love the back and forth between Paul and Ringo. The lyrics are very clever. And just the whole sentiment, even though we bring up Monty Python here, that, when you were younger, you didn't have much, you were poor, but everybody else in the neighborhood was poor. So it didn't seem like anything was bad in your life. This is how everybody lived. That was all they knew. I love that. I love the guitar solo towards the end that Paul plays on Home to Us. Just
Mhm.
the right touch. It's short, it's right exactly what was needed in that song. The absolute jewel in this album, which nobody has brought up, is Life Can Be Hard.
Hmm.
That is a gorgeous song. And it sounds to me like it was written for a musical or something. It
Yeah.
has
Mhm.
a little bit of dance hall in it.
Hmm.
It's not exactly When I'm 64, but it could work in a movie or for a stage show. And it's so beautiful. Paul's vocals are in the falsetto range, and it's so beautiful, his vocals, and strong. And I just love this song. Mixing a violin in there, mixing a clarinet in there, it works. If you miss that kind of style, that 30s or 40s standard style,
Hmm.
um, I know he did Kisses on the Bottom, and there's songs like that on there, the new ones that Paul wrote for it. This is just it's worth the price of this album just for that one song.
Well,
That's how much I love Life Can Be Hard.
Wow.
Um, Sometimes I wonder, and no one's thought to ask this, might any songs that are on here been songs that he originally thought of for It's a Wonderful Life?
Mm.
Maybe Life Can Be Hard could have been a song that was going to be in the show. I don't know.
Mhm.
I may be just jumping the gun here by saying that, but I just love that song. I really do. I love Paul's vocals on there. Um, it's gorgeous. It really is. First Star of the Night was a sleeper for me.
Mhm.
Darren said it was a sleeper. Now I think it's really nice. And for a very soft vocal, kind of like the Kisses on the Bottom approach of soft vocals. Um, Very simple melody, but it works. And there's actually the iTunes version is just a demo of the song, which is only Paul on guitar, and it's pretty darn close to what's on here
Hmm.
because there wasn't too much added to it. Um, Salesman Saint, I like a lot. I mean, I kind of expected more from it.
Mhm.
I don't know if because I love the sound of brass, and very often, if you're using a keyboard, brass is the one thing that they don't capture as well as everything else. I don't know if this is a keyboard being used or a real brass section. Sure sounds like the
It's real.
solo trumpet. It's
It's real
what?
brass. It's real
It is
brass.
real?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. All right. But I like the fact that he's talking about his parents here and it was a struggle for them to get by. For a while, all they lived on was tea and cigarettes, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And Paul has talked in interviews. The one interview with Tom Holland was very touching because he talked about his mother being a midwife and she would have to go. There was one particular day, there was a lot of snow outside. The snow was very high, and she had to go out and deliver a baby and ride in her bicycle in the snow.
Mhm.
So just remembering the hardship that they had, both parents, um, this is the mere fact that they both had to work to get by. Um, but it's a good song. There's one thing that they do that's very clever in this song, which I believe the Beatles did in Happiness is a Warm Gun. At the very end of Salesman Saint, the song is continuing on in 3/4 time, but there's also 4/4
Four. Yeah.
going on because the hand claps that you hear are in 4/4 and the main melody is in 3/4. So I'm pretty sure they did that in Happiness is a Warm Gun. And just the fact that they changed tempos in the song, time signatures in the song. 3/4 to 4/4, they also did in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, but not simultaneously.
It's not the only one here either.
Mhm.
Life Can Be Hard. The bridge is in 6/8 and the verses are in 4.
Okay, very good. All right. See, we know our music theory here on this show. We know.
We can count
But
anyway.
just barely. And Mama Gets By, I think, is absolutely stunning. I love the song a lot. I love the melody. I like Paul's vocals. I love the words in there about, what's the point of, and I'm not quoting it, like being critical when what really matters is what you feel inside. You know, the melody is just so nice. He's so great at doing these ballads. It's haunting. I like when he ends an album with something like that. Like Only Our Hearts, for example, was a great ballad from him. Um, so overall, I'm pleased with just about every single song. I still have to work on what's the one? Never Know. Might be the only one I'm struggling with at the moment. But as I've said before on this show, I wish every album I listened to, I liked every song but one. But and like we noted, it's really important to say this. He is writing his songs for what he can sing well. And if he's limited in his range, he's writing it around it. He's able to write melodies that fit his range, depending upon whatever the vocal delivery is. He can have a soft delivery 1 minute, like First Star of the Night. He can scream a bit, like in Come Inside, but he really is mastering what to do with whatever limitations he has right now.
Yeah.
And just wish I knew more about what Andrew Watt brought to the table. The thing about this and Chaos and Creation that's similar is that, like you said, Kit, it's very intimate.
Mhm.
There's not layers and layers of production here. It's more trimmed down,
Yeah.
simple production with some touches thrown in.
Mhm.
But if you want something like this, if you want lyrics that mean a lot to Paul, if you want some variety, which he is the king of, if you want to hear him still sound really good vocally, this album will work for you.
Okay. So me then.
Yes, we're
Andrew
all
Watt
waiting.
played guitar on some tracks and co-wrote 5 of the songs.
I
Mhm.
heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so but a lot of the songs, Paul's playing everything,
Hmm.
so it's one of those in that tradition of McCartney 1, 2, 3. Um, so I don't know if I'm going to go through every single song, but there were interesting things about all of them, really. As you lie there, I mean, apart from the Shangri-La thing, I mean, I kind of like the tune of the refrain of that is really kind of catchy and memorable. As you lie
Mhm.
there,
Yeah.
Mm.
that could have worked. It also sort of makes you think. I mean, you have to think of these things, songs really, I think we all probably tend to think of songs by any of the Beatles in 2 ways, as pure songs and as what are these specific guys referring to and talking about, right? So
Right.
Mm.
if you think of it as, not just a song, but as Paul doing this song, it's kind of a little odd him wondering whether this random girl who was a neighbor of his, if he ever crosses her mind. I mean, he's Paul McCartney. He's probably crossed her mind.
Ah, ah,
And, she lived on his street and he became, yeah, I mean, come on. Of course he crossed her mind. She crossed his mind. He crossed her mind. Whatever. Uh, so let's see. Lost Horizon. It was catchy. It was uh, probably for me not one of the stronger cuts on the album. But it's likable. Um, a lot of nice vocal harmonies on it, close harmonies. They're
mhm.
not we're not talking about Baroque counterpoint here, but still it's okay. Days We Left Behind, I think we all sort of agree is you know really one of the high points of the album, despite not just because we all knew it,
Yeah.
but because of really all the things Kit said about that nothing remain stays, everything is fleeting, and it's an interesting thing, certainly for an 83-year-old guy to be singing, and
Yeah.
coming to terms with all of that. Ripples in a pond. Okay, ripples in a pond. We too. Uh, you know, these songs. I mean, everyone we can presume they're for Nancy, but
Mhm.
they don't have to be. They they,
Mm.
they just work as love songs, and you know, they're sort of in that tradition of his. We too. Was sort of tussling over, whether it's more about, aspects of it or maybe about John. I dreamed of
Yeah.
you last night.
Mm.
Um, but, in the end, if you look at the written lyrics, there was a cross out on that line and a change and, made it, more clearly about Nancy or a woman, Paramore than about John. But you sort of we often, I think, read little messages to each other Beatles in Beatles tunes, and
Yep.
so there's an element of that, and it could be the case. Who knows? Uh, I thought that was a nice track. I like the little electric guitar tracery, in between lines, and also the vocal harmonies there. Um, I'm not going to do them all. So, Never Know. Never Know was an interesting one because I started off really sort of shrugging it off and, because it's a little bit throwbacky because of
Mhm.
those, oh, oh, oh,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but, but I ended up kind of liking that, it ended up being sort of, a catchy tune in the recorder solo, which is Paul. Um, I
Oh,
kind of
okay.
like that too. My mind is black and blue. Some
Yeah.
odd, interesting lines there.
Mm.
Uh, Life Can Be Hard. I absolutely agree with you. That's one of my favorites on this album too. It to me has this sort of almost sort of Parisian jazz kind of feel.
Mm.
And, in a different orchestration with a different kind of backing group, it could have fit on Kisses on the Bottom, I thought. It's really in that
Mm.
tradition of standards. And, you know, standards, we sort of have to think about the fact that standards are kind of important to Paul, I
Yeah.
mean, he's the one who sang Till There Was You and, Taste of Honey and all of those things in the Beatles.
Mm.
And was writing things like When I'm 64 when he was like 16. You know, he's always had that strain of, antiquarian musical taste going on. It was the music that his father played. It was the music he listened to, and it's the music that he bought catalogs and catalogs and catalogs of. I mean,
Hmm.
he owns half the standards ever written at this point, you know? And so this is just in that tradition, and he's obviously comfortable writing it. And yeah, first star of the night again, it's pretty much what everyone else has said. But the thing about it I would want to point out is that these three right here, Life Can Be Hard, First Star of the Night, Salesman Saint, it's like towards the end of the album, you're getting a little bit of a jazzy interlude, you know? Um, the harmonies are a little on the jazzy side, and it's sort of, lighter textured, more standard standard in the sense of standards, kind of sound and melody. And then Salesman Saint, you've got that shifting meter, you've got the changing meters in Life Can Be Hard. Uh, you look at Mountaintop too. It's not a change of meter so much as a change in tempo, but it's very striking, So if you think he's, throughout this album, he's doing interesting things with meters and tempos. It's just, add that to the, you know, allusions to older music and stuff. You've got so many different kind of things going on in the album beyond just the songs, you know, just different sort of combinations of interesting technical things he's doing. And that to me was really interesting. And then, Mama Gets By. I've already done my Carly Simon thing with that. So,
I never thought that
I
about
never did
yeah,
about
either.
those two songs.
listen
Yeah.
to it again and listen to hers. And I'm just talking about the chord progression that opens it and the harmonies, because there's a little bit of dissonance in there, and it's the same
Mhm.
dissonance she uses.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and they both begin really, if you take away her vocal, because she starts right in with the vocal and he doesn't. But,
Right.
so da, 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 there's a little bit of that, and it's very similar. So give it a spin, and then take out your Shangri-La's albums.
Paul has talked about the Shangri-Las
He
because
has.
whenever he mentioned Linda, when people comment that she's not a great singer, he would say, "Well, I'm not looking for, an opera singer or anything like that. He wanted like a girl group sound."
Hmm.
And he would sometimes reference the Shangri-Las, more of a Shangri-Las sound.
And he
He
mentions the
likes that sound.
Shangri-Las in there's a McCartney 2 outtake, Mr. H. Adam uh, begins with, Shangri-La's verses. I can't remember who its verses just at the moment, but Shangri-La's the first words of that song. So, and Carly Simon, he sang on one of her albums. He and Linda both,
True.
she was recording in London, and they
Hmm.
popped by and invited Carly Simon and her ensemble to his sessions the next day, which was Live and Let Die.
Mm.
So, there are reasons for all these things probably, and maybe they're subliminal. Who knows? But
Mm.
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so do we have anything else, any other business to transact here?
I would just
Apart
like
from,
to make a prediction.
Hmm.
Mm.
I think I thought I had the album cover here. Do I have it? No. But I think that this album will probably be album of the year at the Grammys next year.
Wow.
Mm.
Interesting.
I'm
Wow.
predicting it. It's
Mhm.
time. It's Paul's time. And a lot of people have written so positively about this. And he took a lot of time and care in putting this album together. And I do hope it happens.
Mhm.
I hate to be a, um, because I'd love that to happen, but it just seems as though this style of music from a veteran act like a Paul McCartney, that those days are gone for
Yeah.
them to get that type of consideration at the Grammys. It's a shame to say, but
maybe a nomination.
Yeah, there's other categories I think that he could win and that he hasn't won in the past. You know, rock album or I don't know, some of these categories. Pop album conceived on a cloudy day when but he should have won some of these big Grammys in the past for other things, but
he should have won
I
Album
hope
of the
you're
Year.
right. I hope you're right.
He should have won for Tug of War Album of the Year.
Yeah, what was the
Definitely.
one more recently that there was some talk that he was a bit upset? Was it Flaming Pie or was it Chaos that he was nominated? And
I don't know.
I think
the ceremony too, and didn't win. I don't know.
I think that he was nominated. Vanilla Sky was nominated for something, and
Oscar,
he performed it, and he didn't win. But he's won a few Grammy Awards, but not for Album of the Year.
Yeah.
Engineering for Band on the Run.
They don't
Rockestra
do
theme.
Those makeup Grammys like they used to years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I love Steely Dan, but I don't know if Two Against Nature is a Grammy of the Album of the Year award-winning album, but it did, and I always looked at that as being a good example of making up for past, maybe oversights or
Tony Bennett. Bennett.
Yeah.
I mean, very late in his life.
Yeah.
Was acknowledged. In
fact, Tony Bennett actually even won the Grammy Album of the Year for a live album.
Yes.
Unplugged. That was the Unplugged. That was like, that's the one he. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's the makeup.
And I just want to mention one more thing that I think we all have touched on, and I think it's important to stress that this is an album that merits repeat listenings because you will pick up things that on every subsequent listen, a certain piano part, a bass line, a melody. I mean, it definitely does not. You're not going to soak all this in one listening. So, this is a grower kind of album. I mean, many of the tracks.
It's a grower, not a soaker.
That's right.
That's a good one.
Okay, so why don't we go around and say what we're up to, and start with Ken.
Okay, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can always email me at everylittlething@att.net. On my own YouTube channel, which is Ken Michaels Radio, just did a couple of new shows, one of which is with the music journalist Owen Lynn, who's been a frequent guest on my channel. He was just at the Cannes Film Festival, and he got to see the new John Lennon documentary, The Last Interview. So he gives us a sneak preview of what that's all about. We still don't know yet what's going to happen in the States, if there's going to be any streaming at all for this documentary or physical release. But if you want to know something about John Lennon, The Last Interview, check that out on my YouTube channel. Also, I mentioned before Mike Nair, who is a cameraman who's been doing camera work for television broadcasts for many years. Last 12 years, he's worked on the Seth Meyers show. Well, he got to witness rehearsals for Paul at SNL. Also the performances, hung around after the show, a lot of things that he's done in his career. He was cameraman at the 12-12-12 concert at Madison Square Garden, one of them. Change Begins Within, the David Lynch event at Radio City Music Hall, a whole bunch of things. And he talks about his career and what this whole SNL experience was like. He spent a lot of time in the NBC building since he's worked for Seth Meyers. He knows a lot of the people at SNL, has witnessed a lot of shows at SNL, just being there. And he's a great guest, a great speaker. Check out that show. Mike Nair is his name. And also these interviews are available on the Beatles-orama website, Beatlesorama.com. My syndicated radio show, Beatles Every Little Thing, can be heard on approximately 50 radio stations, but the easiest way to hear it is on WFDU's website, WFDU.FM. You can actually listen when it's broadcast live Saturday mornings at 6 a.m., Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. But to make it even easier, you can go to their archives page and listen to the last two shows that they aired on WFDU.FM. And also, don't forget my own website, kenmichaelsradio.com, has lots of audio interviews of people in Beatle history, authors, musicians, you name it. They are kind of old now, but they're all strong. They all have value. Lots of people you've heard of. And it's right there, as well as Beatles trivia, in which you can win books, CDs, DVDs. And just by knowing Beatles trivia, Beatles and solo trivia, a new trivia question or game gets posted tonight. Maybe it'll be something on Boys of Dungeon Lane. Maybe it'll be something that we said here in this show. I don't know. You'll have to play back the whole show, start to finish, and then that way you'll get the answer. So that's it.
Okay. Kit?
Okay. Mine is pretty short because I've been doing a bunch of other things lately, but I do have some projects coming up. You can find me at kidotool.com. Also check out my other show, Toppermost, thepoppermost.net. You can find all of our episodes. We are going to be recording new ones very soon, so keep an eye on that. You can also join our Facebook group, and you'll be notified when we drop new episodes. And in a few weeks, Ken Womack and I are back with our Classic for a Reason series, and this time we are going to discuss Buddy Holly. We're doing a special tribute to him and the collection, from the master tapes. Really looking forward to that. It's going to be a great show. I will post all the information about how to register and so forth very soon on all the various pages. But I hope you will join us. That will be Tuesday, June 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And I think that's everything.
And of course, there's a Beatles connection there because Buddy Holly's catalog is owned by our guy.
Macca. That's right. He sure does.
Okay, Darren?
The radio show is Noises from the Valley, and it is on WKZE, which is in Red Hook, New York, in Dutchess County. Hudson Valley is the valley that I'm alluding to. And Red Hook is a stone's throw right on the other side of the Hudson River from the Woodstock and Saugerties area. Noises from the Valley can be heard Friday nights, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. WKZE, if you're in the area, is at 98.1 FM. I'm looking over here at my cheat sheet, and 105.9 FM. But for those of you outside of that part of upstate New York and Western Connecticut, you could listen at WKZE.com, and they have an app. And the website's cool because it's got recent shows archived. I'm not exactly sure how long they stay up there for. I probably should know that. But if you go back and listen to my most recent show, which aired this past Friday night, the last show of May, for the month of May, I did a whole bunch of fun things, like a 59th anniversary salute to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, where I played a bunch of covers of other artists doing songs from Sgt. Pepper, and that included a bunch of songs from the infamous All This and World War II soundtrack, which also turned 50 this year, later in the year. So you get to hear Roy Wood's 1 minute and 14-second version of Lovely Rita, and Keith Moon doing When I'm 64, and also Judy Collins doing When I'm 64, and crazy stuff like that. And the show also had a couple of other anniversary tributes. 50th anniversary, played two songs from the first Alan Parsons Project album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, Edgar Allan Poe, two songs from Roger McGuinn's album Cardiff Rose, turning 50, and two songs from The Royal Scam from Steely Dan, which turned 50 a few days ago. and I did a couple of songs for the 40th anniversary of Peter Gabriel's album So, and a few songs in remembering the great saxophonist Sonny Rollins. Played some Sonny Rollins things as well on Noises from the Valley. This coming Friday night, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'll know on Friday night. So tune in and look for me on Facebook. 2 Facebook pages you can join or like or send me friend requests. And I hope you listen, and I appreciate it if you do.
Okay. And me, well, this week I took a few days off from writing the book to review the album. And that will be in the Wall Street Journal. Theoretically, I think it was originally scheduled for Wednesday online and Thursday in the paper, but I'm not sure, things change in newspapers all the time. But it should turn up sometime this week. And that's basically it for me. So you can find me on Facebook at Allan Kozinn or Allan Kozinn Remixed, and there is a McCartney Legacy Facebook page and also mccartneylegacy.co.uk website. You can contact all of us at thingswesaidtodayradioshow@gmail.com and on formerly known as Twitter at Things We Said Fab, and BlueSky at Things We Said Today. And we have the Facebook page Things We Said Today video podcast, where the shows are always posted and you can comment, and you can comment on them on YouTube and every place else too. And also subscribe to us if you haven't already, and click like and all that stuff. So for Ken Michaels and Kid O'Toole and Darren DeVivo, I'm Allan Kozinn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.